Welcome back to the channel. This video is Public Domain Heroes Part 3. In this video we're covering a pyromaniac, a science experiment, a rather dapper gentleman, and a fashionista to match. So let's get straight to it. First up is The Flame, created by Lou Fine, first appearance Wonderworld Comics number 3, July 1939. We'll start with the character's powers, skills, and gear. The Flame's most notable feature is his flamethrower, which can even work underwater. Pair that with fire manipulation, teleporting by flames, meaning he can teleport from one source of fire to another. He can also heat his body to the point where bullets melt on contact, and he can even run on flame, like how Iceman slides on ice. He sometimes traveled by method of his personal boat or plane. Actually, to think about it, a lot of characters had personal boats and planes at this time. Origin. As a baby, Gary Preston was washed away in a flood. He was rescued and raised by Tibetan monks. The monks taught the young Gary to control flame. When Gary reached adulthood and mastered these mystical Tibetan abilities, he moved back to the United States and became the Flame. Later on, after being injured, Gary instructed his girlfriend Linda Dale to replace him as Flame Girl. Gary eventually recovered and the duo went on as a team. Now it's time for some fun facts. The Flame was actually part of the Big Three, the first Big Three. Now, when I say the Big Three, you might think of DC's Trinity or Marvel's Iron Man, Thor, and Cap. That's not what we're talking about today. We're talking about Fox's Comics Big Three. The Flame was grouped with the popular characters of the time, the first Blue Beetle and Samson. Second on today's episode, we have Power Nelson, created by Paul Norris, Prize Comics number 1, 1940. For powers, Power Nelson has super strength and super durability. He also wears metallic body armor. Power Nelson's origin. In the distant future of 1982, the world has been ravaged by World War II and III at this point. In this timeline, America won both world wars, but was left vulnerable after the chaos of the conflict. Emperor Sang I of the Mongol Empire rules New York from his palace. A group of scientists chose a young man by the name of Gene West to undergo an experiment. The experiment, of course, giving him powers and turning him into Power Nelson. Power Nelson is actually one of the characters brought back for Dynamite's Project Superpowers. In Project Superpower, he's actually the President of the United States. And that leads us to The Clock, created by George Brenner. First appearance, Funny Picture Stories 101, November 1936. For powers, skills, and gear, The Clock is mostly just a skilled athlete with some cool gear. The Clock steps out in a full three-piece suit, fedora, and mask, which was later changed to a domino mask, just dressed to the nines really. He did have a cane that could fire its head like a projectile weapon and spray out tear gas. He also had skills as a hypnotist. The Clock also had an underground lair. Now for The Clock's origin. Former district attorney and wealthy high society type, Brian O'Brien pretty much woke up one day and decided to start fighting crime. That's basically it. Now, one cool thing about The Clock is that he would leave a calling card at the scene and it would read, "The clock has struck." He had a couple of sidekicks. The first was former boxer Pat Pug Brady. They met while picking each other's pockets. Brady eventually left and in came a young girl named Butch Buchanan. who stayed for the rest of the Clock's adventures. Now, there's some debate, but the Clock might actually be the first comic book hero to wear a mask in American comics. He does usually get credit for inspiring the masked detective hero trope. He's also one of the characters in Dynamite Entertainment Mask miniseries. Also, another fun fact, the Clock fell into public domain in 1956 when DC Comics acquired the rights to Quality Comics, and then decided that they didn't want to use most of the characters. Later on, DC Comics stated that the character was killed in 1944, the year of the Clock's final appearance in his original run. But then it was later revealed that his death was greatly exaggerated, and the Clock was actually busy fighting crime in Chicago. And last but certainly not least, Miss Fury, created by June Tarpe Mills, one of the few female creators of the time. First appearance, Miss Fury Comics #1. For powers, skills, and gear, Miss Fury is a very agile fighter. She has a special ceremonial leopard skin costume with claws. Miss Fury didn't just rely on her fighting ability. She was a very quick thinker and often outsmarted her enemies. Now, Miss Fury didn't just rely on her incredible fighting ability. She was also a quick thinker and often outsmarted her enemies. Miss Fury's origin. Real name is Marla Drake. Marla was a wealthy socialite. While intending to find an outfit for a masquerade, she realized that another woman had the same outfit as her, and we just can't have that. So Marla ended up wearing an ancient ceremonial leopard skin costume, the costume that she would later go on to fight crime in. Now, Marla was a fashion designer, and she would sometimes go multiple issues in a row without actually wearing her superhero costume. Now for extras and fun facts. So this is a bit interesting to me, so we're gonna take our time on this, okay? Keep in mind this was the early 40s. Marla had an enemy named Baroness Erica von Kampf, and an old fiance named Gary Hale. Hale and Kampf had a kid together. Miss Fury rescued the baby from another one of her enemies while in Brazil, unaware of the baby's parentage. After a little difficulty with the system, she successfully adopted the baby, making Miss Fury a single mother superhero drawn and written by a female creator. That's pretty bold. The comic is a combination of action, soap opera, and I mean that in the best way, and espionage with an emphasis on fashion. So that wraps up Public Domain Heroes Part 3. Now, time for my final thoughts. I just want to say, as an action fan, The Flame has been quite an enjoyable read. This comic moves at such a fast pace, it's just one action sequence after another. Sometimes it's a little too quick though, like we could have slowed it down a little bit to focus on some dialogue, character, narrative, those sort of things, but The Flame is still an easy recommendation from me. I also really enjoyed reading Miss Fury, a little bit more of a drama, thriller type of story. Alright, so that's everything for this one. I want to thank you all for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed, and see you next time. Thank you.